Hello friends, how's it going? It's Matt and you're listening to episode 57 of the Looking Sideways Action Sports podcast. It's my show where I interview the great and good of the action sports world in an effort to try and uncover the best stories out there. So big thanks to listening to or downloading this one. I hope you enjoy it. If it's your first visit to my little corner of the internet and you do like the episode, you might want to check out some of the other interviews I've done over the last 18 months the show's been going. Tom Carroll, Travis Rice, Alex Honnold, Lane Beachley, Mick Fanning, Hayden Cox is a big long list now. If you head over to my site www.wearelookinsideways.com, you'll find the entire back catalogue and you can subscribe on iTunes to make sure you don't miss any of the regular bonus episodes I also release from time to time. Anyway, Rob Machado. Now obviously I'm aware of how famous and well loved Rob is, but the outpouring of genuine delight from friends and listeners when I mentioned I'd be speaking to the great man genuinely took me by surprise, to be honest. People are invested in Rob Machado. So it's always great when the legends live up to the hype, and that was definitely the case here. Now, Rob was in town to promote The Momentum Generation, the new documentary that catches up with the iconic Momentum crew 25 years after they first came onto the wider surf scene via Taylor Steele's classic film of the same name. So I watched this one before I met Rob, and yeah, it's a compelling watch. And the film doesn't shy away from tackling some of the great surf talking points of our time. Rob and Kelly's infamous high five, the injury wildcard vote that ended Rob's career, competitive career, I should say. Todd Chesser. It's all here, really. Now, I must admit, within the first half an hour, I did think this was going to be quite a vanilla telling of the story of the golden momentum generation. But it soon becomes clear that there's a much deeper story at play, one which deals with universal themes that anybody can recognise. Among these are competitiveness, loss, grief, but above all, the arc of friendship, which is what me and Rob really ended up discussing. The question is, how can a group of friends navigate the challenges of life and come out the other end with those same relationships intact? Throw in the incredible competitiveness of the people in question, and you have a combustible cocktail that duly did explode. And the filmmakers don't shy away from turning a light on some of these clearly long-lasting tensions. Now, everybody with a group of friends from their youth will recognise these themes because, let's be honest, envy and jealousy are as much a part of friendship as all the cheesy Instagram quotes in the world. And the filmmakers really don't turn away from tackling this stuff head on. I keep using the word unflinching to Rob, and it is really, which makes a real change in our little fluffy world to see people actually having a crack at this. But there's ultimately an uplifting moral to this one, as the filming process clearly cathartically gave everybody the chance to lay some of those demons to rest. Happily, Rob was also happy to talk in depth about these legendary stories, and he seemed to appreciate my line of questioning, which is pretty much what I've just said. And the result is an intimate, honest and completely compelling chat with one of the greatest surfers of the lot. So big thanks to Rob for coming on my humble little show and for getting into the spirit of the podcast so enthusiastically. And just to show what an absolute gent he is, a couple of days later I got an Instagram message thanking me for having him on and saying he also really enjoyed our exchange. What a man, eh? So here it is, my chat with Rob Machado on the arc of friendship. Enjoy. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to do this.
It's good to be here, man. It's good to be back in England. It's been too long.
I had no idea about your family roots then. So you sound like you're practically a London local, South London local.
South London, Surbiton, yeah. My grandfather was a tennis professional.
Wow, okay.
At the Surbiton Lawn and Tennis Club.
Wow.
So I used to go there and bang tennis balls around as a little dude.
Right.
My uncle was on the English squash national team, so he traveled around playing squash, and so yeah, I've been coming here since I was just a little guy with my mom. My mom still answers the phone at home and says, "Hello, darling."
Yeah. Puts the accent on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. Everyone trips out. They're like, "Your mom has such a cool accent."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "She has an accent?"
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm just so used to it.
Yeah. So you're going to check in with the family on this little trip?
Yeah. I'm excited to see them. They're going to come see the film tonight.
Yeah.
So,
Great. So that'll be a nice moment then, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the film, yeah. So like I was saying, I watched it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. What are your thoughts now that you've had time to obviously digest and no doubt see it quite a few times?
Yeah. I was really blown away the first time I kind of like got to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
And the interview process was really intense.
Yeah, it looked it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It looked like there was a lot of, well, like we were saying, rawness and honesty. You know, you went there basically.
Yeah, the Zimbalist brothers, they did a lot of research. And being guys that, aren't surfers, I take my hat off to them that they really dug deep and they went into some old interviews and dug up a lot of clips and stuff that probably we'd forgotten about.
Really?
And my first interview was a solid 8 hours.
Wow. Okay.
And I think for each guy, it was that long. I mean, everybody, it was really intense and long, and they asked questions that were probably a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But they led up to it in good ways, like really built that comfort. But I bet if you asked any one of us, there wasn't one of us that would have said that you went to sleep that night after the interview and didn't feel like maybe you said something.
Right.
That might be
inflammatory almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have this like almost like remorse.
Well, it came across like we were just saying, for me watching it is about the arc of friendship really, and the way that you guys obviously had this incredible period in your lives, this relationship, but then as you grow older, how that changes and how you cope with that, and then you throw in the competitiveness that's obviously a huge theme which everybody in the film admits to. You throw in the life events that are happening, and it's almost a bit like, well, how do you maintain that friendship? How do you cope with it? And how do you kind of get through it all? I mean, is that kind of fair to say?
That's very fair to say. Life is full of challenges, right? And like you said, coming out of our teen years when we all really became, I think, a really tight group of friends.
Yeah, which it conveys really well. I mean, that's one of the really nice parts of the beginning of the film, isn't it?
And I look at Benji's house as being that kind of catalyst to bringing us all together. I mean, there was those few years there where we went to Hawaii and, we didn't all stay at Benji's house, but that was the first thing you did every single morning. You woke up, you drove straight to Benji's house, regardless of what the waves were.
Right.
Even if it was, 30 feet and you were going to go surf somewhere else, you still went to Benji's house.
Yeah.
That was where everyone congregated, and then it was like that plans were kind of made from there.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, it's onshore and whatever, we're going to go see a movie. It was like and so Benji's house was just this zone, and I can't remember how many years, it must have been 4 or 5 years, it felt like, where that was it. And that really kind of gelled us all together. And, we went through a lot of craziness, being on the North Shore in the 90s. We weren't traveling with girlfriends. There wasn't any girls on the North Shore. It was just a bunch of dudes. Like, it's like, what kind of trouble can you get into, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, if there's waves, there's no waves. I mean, we were doing something all the time as a group. So it was cool. And then, you evolve into, then you start bringing the competitiveness into it.
Yeah. And
that gets intense, and learning how to juggle, that competitive spirit, and how do you dive into a heat, into a jersey, and go out with one of your best friends.
Yeah.
And like basically treat them like any other dude and want to rip their head off or do whatever it takes to win, right? It's like to get into that competitiveness and then come back to the beach
and be friends again
and go hang out at Benji's house. Go grab some dinner together.
Yeah.
A lot of times, sometimes you're staying together.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really came across that wasn't easy for you guys, you know, and as you all became more successful, it became more of something that you needed to learn how to process and cope with, really.
Yeah. It wasn't easy, I think, and a lot of us didn't really know what we were doing. You know,
yeah, well, you're young, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to work it out. Like, this is how
Yeah.
you learn these things, isn't it?
You're in your 20s. You're just going
Yeah.
for it. You're like, you know, we had two goals in life. It was to do well on the tour and to make a good section in Taylor Steele movies.
Yeah.
That was it. That was all you had to focus on. So, I mean, you know, the mental health side of it, like, you didn't, even if you were feeling down or confused or lonely or sad, you really didn't turn to that group of friends, because then you almost like opened up like a side of weakness.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
You kind of had to keep that like bravado and like, no, I'm good. And maybe we might have been actually too young to really kind of comprehend.
Yeah.
We just kind of like brushed it all aside and just said, oh, it's good. We'll just move on to the, you know, on to the next.
Yeah. So do you think this process of making this documentary has kind of laid a few of these demons to rest for you guys? Do you think there's been a few, you know, loose ends tied up, relationship wise? Because it's so honest.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you're all pulling, you know, we'll get to the high fives and all this stuff, but, you know, there's the stories that we all know. They're dealt with really pitilessly, you know, and there's a lot of like real, like, well, he acted this way, and I think that means this, and then it cuts to like you hearing that or whatever, or Kelly hearing that, and it's, you know, it is pretty raw, you know. So I'm guessing that might have been the first time a lot of these issues were really faced like this openly.
You're exactly right, and I think the Zimbalist brothers did a really good job, kind of bringing these issues back up and like putting them in front of us.
Yeah.
And
clever, isn't it?
I bet a lot of us, we kind of put all these things behind us. You kind of just brush them aside and don't think about it. And then now that they kind of rekindled it, you kind of like, you think about it and you think, oh wow, what was it? Where was my mind at when that was happening? Or what was he thinking when that happened? And you kind of think it through, and it's really, I think it's helped clear a lot of these, you know, these incidents or episodes that we've gone through in our lives.
Sure.
It helped just kind of flesh them out and like, hey, you know what? Like, that's all, we're all still here.
Yeah.
We're all still surfing.
And we're still friends.
And we're all still friends.
And we kind of worked it out in the end.
That's pretty miraculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm interested in the way they approached it, because you said that they had the archive and the footage. So was the process that they looked at that, and then, you know, obviously they're going to know the big stories, but did they kind of draw out these themes and then do the interviews and piece it together in this quite almost like storyline calculated way, if you like? Was that the way it was done?
Gosh, I mean, they were given so much footage.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is clear. I mean, it's like a daunting amount of work, no doubt.
Oh, I know Taylor Steele for a fact handed them just boxes and boxes full of old, you know, little high 8 tapes, and none of it was labeled.
Yeah.
Taylor was horrible at being organized.
Sure, right.
And so it was just like, here you go.
Yeah.
And then each guy, I know they came and raided my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
got everything
I had from the 90s. Just like, give it to I mean, I can't imagine. I think they've actually said that was one of the biggest archival mountains that they've ever had to go through for any film.
Sure.
So they had a lot to deal with there. I think they did a lot of their research, you know, in old magazine interviews and going back and really diving into these stories and stuff that was said, because I remember them reading to me quotes that I said in interviews from the 90s, and I'd be like, whoa, I said that?
Yeah, well, that's another brilliant part of the film, when there's like a couple of anecdotes that people are like, I didn't do that. There's no way I did that. Right? Yeah, and then they're like, no, he did it. He did that. Yeah. You know, like, is it, and that, the other theme that I kind of thought about watching it is like, a lot of it is about memory as well, and like, you know, how memories can be unreliable sometimes, especially in a group. You know, you can remember things differently, and that in itself can create tension, can't it? You know, which is another thing that kind of comes out in this. Yeah, and it's how you portray it. Yeah. Right? It's like one guy portrays it one way. That's right. There's always 3 sides of the story. And that's a process thing as well, isn't it? Yeah. Because like you say, you've got your own battles and you try to work these things out, and you will often like kind of rationalize things in a certain way, won't you?
Definitely.
That you go like, okay, well that's what happened, and then when
Yeah.
somebody does come along and go, well, no, that's not what happened actually.
Right.
It can be quite. It can shake you a bit, can't it?
Yeah, and you learn that as you go on in life and through relationships and having differences with people. Like I just said, there's always three sides to every story. There's your side, their side, and then there's the truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, which is in the middle somewhere.
It's in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And that's like, sitting in front of a judge, like imagine the three sides that they hear or the two sides they hear, right? It's like, probably, and that's like you said, how people rationalize what they've done or what has happened.
Yeah.
So it's coming to terms with what actually happened. Really, and just kind of saying like, well, even if I thought it was this way, now that I see his side of the story, and it's so far past, that I'm cool with it. Like maybe even if I felt like I didn't do that, like what he's saying, like I felt like it was more on my side, but that's cool.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's fine. Yeah. The other big thing that I was really interested in is the theme of competitiveness, and obviously the way that you guys kind of describe it is almost in terms of Kelly's competitiveness. That's the way it's kind of edited together anyway. And there's this part in the film where almost everyone in the group is kind of saying, well, I was on the tour and I kind of realised that I didn't quite have the level of competitiveness that was required to become a world champion, and also the standard had been set here by Kelly, and that realisation was obviously difficult. It was obviously difficult for everybody involved, and that's again like really, really honest and a very difficult thing to admit, I imagine, for people who have operated at this really high level. Was it that difficult at the time to kind of have that realization that perhaps there was a way you had to behave that perhaps you weren't willing to do?
Yeah, we grew up with Kelly Slater. Let's just put the facts right out there.
Put it that way.
The greatest competitive surfer of all time. And from a very early age, from when we were 12 years old, he won everything.
Yeah.
And he set the level. He always he continued to set the level higher and higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
Which, you can look at the positives and the negatives. Like, we always felt like we were in his shadow, but then again, we were kind of riding his coattails, and we were trying to keep up with him. He was pushing us to be better and pushing us, and we were pushing him. He might feel like we were getting a little bit closer to him and nibbling at his heels, and then he would do something that would just take him up a whole nother level. And I look at it as, we're pretty blessed to have someone like that, and to it'd be like, growing up playing basketball with Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah.
You're on the court with the best basketball player of all time, or Magic Johnson or something, right? And you're surrounded by his greatness, and you get to watch him like continuously raise his level and push himself to new places and drag us with him, which was, maybe we wouldn't have been, I would honestly say we definitely wouldn't have been who we are if we didn't have him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure. Was that, you can say that now though.
Right.
Like what,
at the time we're kind of
what was it like at the time?
Gosh, man, he won again, like he just wins everything. You're kind of, it was every time you got a victory, if you beat him 1 out of 10 times, you celebrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big win.
Yeah.
So to have those moments where you actually came out on top over Kelly or had a moral victory.
Sure.
Yeah, even if you beat him at like a little game of horse basketball or something, in the front yard.
Sure.
Which he was competitive at everything.
I imagine
I used to kick his ass at ping pong, and he hated it.
I bet you were all pretty competitive at everything.
Oh, he hated losing at ping pong.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Obviously the pipeline final is a key moment in the film, like a very, very well told story in surfing culture, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But it is set up as like this kind of pivotal moment in the story of you guys. And, again, the hard questions are not flinched from. There's effectively, I think it's like Potts and Sonny are kind of saying, well, he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
And then there's a kind of couple of like fairly stinging criticisms of you for not being competitive enough almost,
right?
You know, and like, so how do you look at that incident now? Because obviously it is so well known and it is dealt with this directly. You know, has this process helped you digest that incident in a different way?
Oh, most definitely. It's crazy to reopen that whole incident, you know, and look at it and especially being older and being able to step back and kind of analyze the situation. I had no idea, you know, going into that heat, like how crazy of a moment that we were having.
How pivotal a life moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was going out to basically win a world title if I won that heat.
Sure.
It was pretty intense, and I was just in the moment. I was doing my thing. And to be honest, I look back at it. For me, it was a success.
Right. Okay.
Like even before that heat happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Because going into the event, I was not even on the radar. You know, Sonny was going to win the world title. He had to make it through 2 heats, and you know, up until that point, I'd never really caught a good wave at pipe.
Right. Okay.
Like the year before, like I went out and cartwheeled on a couple 10-footers, and I'd never out there free surfing. I'd never really caught any good waves. Like I was.
So personally,
I was a small wave surfer.
Yeah. So personally, it was already like a big progression and a big moment.
A huge progression.
Yeah.
So for me, no one thought I was going to get past the second or third round.
Right.
Because I'd never really done well in Hawaii, or I'd never done anything in waves in any consequence.
Sure.
So to go out and the waves were pumping that whole event.
Yeah.
There was surf.
You remember that when you see the footage.
Yeah, there was surf
perfect.
the whole event. There was a couple days that were like some second reef days, and there was washing through, and but it was really good west swell, and you know, to make it through that many heats and to get to where I was already, for me. I remember my dad telling me that, like, dude, no matter what happens, like
you've succeeded.
You've succeeded.
Yeah.
You made it this far, and you've proved to a lot of people that you can do this.
Right. So for you, that was the story.
Yeah.
Right. Again, that's so fascinating, isn't it? Because that's like so at odds with the public telling of that story,
right,
which was set up as this full on like mano a mano,
right,
like, you know, Rob v. Kelly, like who wins takes the world title kind of thing.
Yeah. And you know, in Kelly's defense, you know, I hear Potts and I hear Sonny, and you know, Sonny's telling me I should have run him over. And
it's pretty harsh, some of it.
Yeah, it's pretty like, full on. And you know, me and Kelly, I remember at one point he
looks like really pissed off with that interpretation as well.
Yeah. And because I remember being in the water and sitting out there, and I actually, there was a lull in the action, and I said, we had a conversation, I remember, and I said, dude, this is crazy. And we looked into the beach, and you know, I mean, there was probably a couple thousand people on the beach, and I said, we're out of pipe, and it's like 8 to 10 feet, and it's just us out here. How cool is that? And I don't know if I kind of caught him off guard a little bit, because I was in this like blissful place of, I am surfing pipeline, and I've made it this far, and I'm just stoked to be here. And he was probably a little more hyper focused on the competitive side, but
sure.
I think when I said that to him, he looked in, and it wasn't long after that exchange happened, that waves, you know, the high five wave. And so I honestly think his mindset, it shifted a little bit, and you know, he was focused on winning world title. He was very focused his entire career, or else he wouldn't have won 11 world titles.
Of course.
But I think for a moment there, he was. And you know what? At that point in the heat, he had already won the heat.
Yeah.
And it was such a non-issue at that moment. There was no distracting me to get priority to get the last wave to win the heat. The heat had already been determined. I think he had 2 10-point wet rides, and I had a 10, and I needed like a crazy high score, like a 9.8 or something. So, okay. I mean,
so do you kind of feel that this narrative's almost been retrofitted to kind of like make a better story? Kind of sounds that way.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds like it's different from how you remember it, basically.
Yeah, I would love to see, like, I wish they could go back and see the entire heat from start to finish and see when the high five actually took place.
Yeah.
And what scores had been posted up to that point, and like where the heat was at.
Yeah.
Really to kind of analyze the whole situation, because It's funny, like we said before, everyone's got their own story.
Yeah.
Like I've heard Sean Thompson tell the story, like,
Yeah.
and Kelly distracts Rob, and Kelly gets priority, paddles out, and gets the winning wave. And I'm like, that's so not true.
That's not what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sean.
Right. No, but it's so well done in the film because it really, it basically deals with it in this way. In like, here's an incident, here's all these different viewpoints, here's the two protagonists, here's what they think, here's what everybody else thinks, and it's still not clear.
Yeah.
And that's why and then there's, like I say, there's the wider media kind of story, isn't there? You know, you do a search like Rob Kelly High Five, it's like, it's that story that you just said, you know. So yeah, it's but it is unflinching, and I did think it was good that they kind of asked you made you deal with it in that way, basically.
I thought it was great. I thought those guys did a really good job just bringing the tough questions right to us, and sticking them to us. And I mean, in my interview, I laughed, I cried, I went through a lot of different emotions, and it was all because of the work that they did. Yeah, to really dig deep. Yeah,
well, the other sort of emotional heart of the film is Todd Chesser, really. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the third sort of key part of it, really. And he's really set up as the moral compass of the film, isn't he, really? You know, for you guys, as almost like he was, you all had so much respect for him, and it sounds like he did carry this moral weight almost for the group. Is that kind of fair to say?
Oh, it's so fair to say. There was just something about Todd and just the way he was, and you know, and it goes back to Benji's house again, right? Like every day, like you came to Benji's house and you walked into the yard, and Todd was there, and whoever was there, Chris Malloy, and you know, a bunch of the boys, and if the waves were big, those guys were going to go surf somewhere. Yeah, and you were either getting dragged along for the ride, or you were trying to dive into the bushes and hide. Because there were some scary moments. I put myself in so many scary situations that, you know, looking back, I'm glad I did, but I wouldn't have ever put myself in those situations if I was by myself. Yeah. Or with just probably normal people.
Yeah. So why do you think you did?
You know, well, you kind of didn't have a choice. Yeah. You know, if Todd looks at you and goes, "Hey, grab your biggest board. We're going to surf Himalayas." Like, you're going. You can't say no. Yeah. There's no excuse. Sure. And so, and the other side of Todd too is, you know, we'd come up to the house some days and we'd look out off the wall and it'd be like maxed out, washing through, and Todd would be out there by himself, waiting for that one little gem to kind of sneak underneath the big ones, and there'd be no cameras on the beach. He just had this like free surfer side of him, right? That you know, we were all so competitive, and he wasn't that competitive. Like he didn't compete in that many events, and he would rather go out and find that little spot and that little zone by himself and have these moments. Sure. And I think that was something, a side of surfing that maybe we didn't really, we weren't as attached to. We were so hyper focused on filming and competing, that I think Todd kind of made us realize, like, let's drive down, you know, to this spot where there's gonna be no one and no cameras are gonna be there, and let's just go surfing. Right.
Wow. Okay. So he did have that real kind of show you a different path, basically, which is a real something that comes through. So when you then, when your competitive career effectively came to an end with the other thing that's dealt with, which is like the kind of injury wildcard vote, which is another thing that's very unflinching. You know, it's like you don't pull any punches about how disappointed you were about that. You know, Taylor almost, I think he uses the words, he's like, well, he was a broken man after that, basically. Yeah. You know, and then obviously the narrative is that you move your career in a different direction with Taylor to become the sort of free surfing role that we know now. Was Todd an influence on that? Was that something where that came from, where you saw that as a possibility?
For sure. Looking back, and I think that's what this film helped us do, is to really look back and analyze. Sure. You know, at the time when that injury wildcard thing went down, like I was pissed. Yeah. I was upset. I was hurt. I felt like I'd been kind of betrayed by like my fellow surfers, and
you did.
And I was really bummed. I didn't want to try to get back on tour.
Right.
I had no interest to try and get back and be out on the road with all these guys.
Why do you think you took it so personally? It might sound like a stupid question, but I'm interested. Was it a betrayal?
Well, the way it was done back then, it was very personal.
Yeah, very primal.
Okay, so it's like, in what sport do you bring all the athletes that you compete against into a room and let them vote
on who's the worthiest?
Yeah,
yeah,
on who deserves to get the injury wild card.
Right.
That's like the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
Did you ever get a reason for it off anybody?
I wasn't at the meeting. That's the thing. And I remember talking to Dan Malloy, and he just said, guys started asking like the most random questions, like, how come he didn't go to the QS event in France? And just like, what's the relevant, because most of the time, if you're not qualifying on the CT, guys immediately go and try to back up.
Sure.
And maybe try and qualify. And they thought that I just didn't care.
Yeah.
That was their, interpretation of
looking
me.
For a reason. Well, he's not that bothered anyway.
Yeah, he doesn't care about the tour. Oh, he's this, that, and the other. It's like, I just finished third in the world.
Yeah.
I just won the Pipe Masters. I felt like better than ever.
So you had unfinished business in your head. For you, it was like you would have carried on.
From 95 was when I finished second. 96, 97, 98. Like, I had a little bit of success, but I was a little bit kind of up and down. I had some funky results in there, and then it all kind of came full circle in 2000, and that's when I finished third. And I thought, okay, which makes total sense, right? Like, I don't see the guys on tour now who are really dialed in and coming into their own are in their late 20s or early 30s.
Sure.
That's like when you see the mental side, the physical side, everything starts to really kind of fall into place. And so I felt like as good as I'd ever felt. I thought I was, really kind of fell into a really good place. And I was ready to hopefully, potentially win a world title. That was the goal.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
So then all of a sudden to be kind of just removed from it.
Yeah.
I had a few years there of, at the same time, Gotcha went bankrupt.
Yeah.
I didn't have a major sponsor. I just had my first child, and life was just like totally flipped upside down.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
I was here adjusting and resetting, like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. Right. So how did you process it? Because obviously, again, the story is, well, you kind of went off and decided to become a free surfer and did a film with Taylor, and, that's kind of, again, covered in the film, but presumably that wasn't quite as straightforward emotionally.
Yeah, and they definitely kind of skipped that little, there's a space there between 2000 and, when I started making The Drifter was in 2007.
Yeah.
And, that's a long period of time.
Yeah, sure.
I remember getting off tour, and I put all my thrusters in a shed. I talked to Al. He made me a single fin.
Right.
And then we started making fishes. We made a twin fin. I didn't ride a proper thruster for like a good solid year and a half.
Right.
I became good friends with Thomas Campbell. Started doing some trips with him and filming for some of his movie projects. And just basically going in the polar opposite direction of the tour. But then it was weird because I'd get these wild cards into events. Like I'd get wild cards into the lowers event, and I won the US Open in 2006 or 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. I won it in 2001, I think, too, as well. And so it's like I was still having these successful moments along the way, but my head wasn't really there. Like, I didn't want to go back and compete full time, but I still had the ability to like just jump in every once in a while.
Yeah, so you could scratch that competitive itch.
Yeah, it was still there. It's hard to just like take it away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the question I've got really. Was the new direction as satisfying as the highs of the competitive years? Because, if you've gone from this, as you're obviously saying, feeling like you've kind of had this path taken away from you, that can't be easy. So did it satisfy you in the same way, or did you have to learn to enjoy it in a different way?
Yeah, I definitely had to learn to enjoy it. But it goes back to the sole reason you started surfing.
Yeah.
Right? Like before you were a competitor, before you learned how to be competitive, right? It's like just the pure enjoyment and the act of riding waves. And like that became, going back and riding single fins and riding twin fins, it was like this whole new challenge and this whole new feeling, because I didn't grow up riding those boards. And Al used to laugh at me. I'd say, Al, make me a single fin. He'd go, oh, Robert, we did that, in the 70s.
Why do you want to do that?
Yeah, like Al was very progressive.
Yeah.
He wanted to make the most high performance boards. And,
Sure.
And for me to ask him for a single fin, he was just like, come on.
He's like, what?
Kid?
Yeah.
You're crazy.
Right.
But there was a big part of me that just wanted, watching old footage of, Buttons and Larry Bertleman and those guys riding these single fins and ripping.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's crazy.
Sure.
I want to feel what those guys felt. I want to know what it was like to ride a board like that, to ride a twin fin, and learn, what the attributes are to riding those boards.
To get back the love perhaps that
had
just faded a little.
Just reconnect with surfing and
Yeah.
just the pure feeling of surfing, and not trying to be the most high performance rad shred guy out in the water all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. So is that how it's remained with your surfing now?
Yeah, so there was a transition time, like you said. Like I, started riding those funky boards and going in that direction, but there was still a little bit of competitiveness sprinkled in there, and
Sure.
and just gradually over time, I kind of came to realize that I just didn't need that competitiveness at all.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that a relief?
Yeah, it was.
Is that
it was a total relief?
Is that another part of age? Do you get because you do get to that point in life, don't you? I think we're a similar age where it is a bit like, oh God, thank God I don't have to be worried about that anymore. Thank God I don't have to like pretend.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, like, oh well, I've got to go out Himalayas because if I don't, these days you wouldn't do it, would you?
You just wouldn't go
because you'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'm a grown man. I can do what I want.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I mean, this is funny that I'm going to tell you this, but I just surfed in the trials for the Surf Ranch Pro.
Sure.
Hurley had a little trials for
I think I heard about that.
4 athletes, and it was myself and Jake Marshall and Baron Mamiya and Hiroto Ohara.
Right.
And, these kids are all half my age.
Sure.
And just frothing to the highest levels. And
Yeah.
and I looked at them and I was just like, wow. Like, this is really happening.
Yeah.
I got to go out and like try harder than I've ever, tried probably in the last 5 years to try and keep up with these guys.
And how was that?
It was, oh man, it was very challenging.
Yeah.
Because, with the Surf Ranch, you eliminate obviously the ocean factor. It's like every wave that comes has the potential to be a 10-point ride. So it's like, it all depends on what you do with it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in the ocean.
No.
Ever.
How do you feel about that?
So
obviously it's the great debate of the modern surfing age.
It's so strange to really wrap your head around. And I think a lot of the surfers, you saw the stress, the anxiety, and how it played out. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How people handle it.
Yeah. Well, it's new ground, isn't it?
Well, let's like a scenario in the ocean right now, the Quick Pro in France. Okay, it's like you have heats that come down to the wire, and a guy needs an 8, and here comes a wave, and the guy gets an 8, but that wave maybe only had the potential to be a 7, and he turned it into an 8, or the wave had the potential to be a 9, and he surfed it really safe, and he barely got an 8.
Sure.
The scenario in the pool is that you need an 8, but here comes a 10.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it really kind of messes with your head. It's like
Different
every
challenge.
wave is a 10.
Yeah.
And it's all depends on how you ride it.
Yeah.
So you don't get those scenarios very often in surfing.
Do you think it's a positive thing? I don't mean generally. I mean in this context that you're talking about. Generally is too big a topic, isn't it? But in terms of that element of,
for that mental side of it, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it challenges the athletes to push themselves to a whole new place where they don't normally go to.
Yeah.
and learn how to deal with that sort of anxiety and that stress. I mean, when you're sitting in the pool, they make this announcement that the guy says in 30 seconds.
Right.
And it's like immediately, even when you're free surfing in that pool,
Yeah.
your heart starts racing.
I imagine it's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of cameras as well.
Yeah. And you're standing there, and here comes you. Then, about 20 seconds later, then you start to hear the wheels start turning.
Yeah. Yeah. You
starts winding up.
You got a nice vocal indicator as well. Yeah.
And it's like, here comes your 10-point ride. What are you going to do with it?
How good are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So that, like, looking at it from like a mental side of it, you have to go to a whole different place.
Yeah.
Than being in the ocean.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Because it's definitely going to basically see it evolve in a different way, in a particular way. It's almost like there's going to be this offshoot now, isn't there, that people are going to have to handle differently.
I mean, we saw it in the stab event that was at Waco.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. Like, I turned it on. I heard, before the event, guys were just flying around doing huge airs, and then all of a sudden,
as soon as that noise starts, yeah,
they said, okay, it counts now.
Yeah. Like,
here's your wave. You get 2 waves, and do those same airs that you were just doing in practice. And guys were just having a hard time.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
When I turned it on, I watched probably 20 waves. I saw like 1 or 2 airs landed. Yeah.
Are you glad this isn't your heyday competitively? to be dealing with this.
Oh, I know. It's challenging, but it's good. Everything evolves, right? Nothing stays the same.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sure these guys, they're up for the challenge.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, that's what surfing is, right? It's like every day you go down to the beach, the waves are different. We see at the French at the contest right now, especially, right, with the tides and the swell and the wind, and it's like it's ever evolving, and it's like you have to be prepared for everything. I had a tough time that when I was competing, like if the waves are bad, and mentally it was like a day that I normally wouldn't be that excited to surf.
Sure.
But I had to surf a heat.
Yeah.
Like then I was already in this like almost half negative state of mind where I was like, shit, the waves aren't very good.
Right.
It's like, well, guess what? Everyone's got to surf the same shit.
Everyone's got to deal with this.
So I just had to get myself over that. But I would immediately, if I saw the waves and I didn't like what I saw, then you're already kind of like setting yourself back.
Sure.
It's a bad place to start from already.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's like, a howling onshore day in Japan and you're sitting out at sea just surfing these wind chops. It's like we all have the same, capabilities and we're all dealing with the same crap out here. It's like you just got to realize that we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of the questions that, obviously when I told people I was going to be speaking to you, I got a lot of people wanted to ask questions. The most common one was actually, what's getting you stoked right now?
Stoked right now?
Yeah. On surfing.
Yeah. Watching my 4-year-old stand up on a little 7-foot foamy.
Ah, nice.
And ride waves, right in front of my house.
Brilliant.
Like, so it has nothing to do with me riding a wave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's this summer was really cool. We had really warm water, and it was kind of a breakthrough summer for him.
Right.
He's been bodyboarding a lot, and then I got him on a little foamy, and just to be able to, push him into a little wave and watch him just go straight, but stand up on a surfboard and ride and be stoked. Like,
yeah.
That's like pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, we can see it through his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's been cool to kind of like pull myself back to that level.
Yeah.
And think back, and being in the ocean is intense.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like sensory overload, for a 4-year-old. It's a very powerful place.
Yeah.
And you tend to overlook that as you get older. You kind of look beyond that.
Yeah,
right?
you take it for granted.
Well, for me, it's a very peaceful place.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah.
Right. I find like solitude and peacefulness in the ocean. Where for him, it's a little bit daunting. It's scary and it's intense, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to teach him how to discover the blissful side of it, and to find the comfort.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've got to wrap it. You've got a busy day by the looks of it. But man, that was great.
Sweet.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So there you go. That was my chat with Rob. Pretty fun, surreal morning, all in all, especially for my right-hand man, Owen Tozer, who took the pictures as usual. Owen, as a little grommet, was properly sold on the whole momentum thing, and hence had a hard time not fanboying out while shooting Rob. Such a shame we didn't get longer with him, really. I've got a feeling we could have chatted for another hour or so, but in these press junket type scenarios, when there's a line of journalists outside, you've got to take what you can get, really. And I'd already ignored the PR when she passed me a note saying wrap it up after half an hour. In the end, I think we got the goods, and I'm glad Rob enjoyed it. Okay, Housekeeping Corner. This week I thought I'd chat about the newsletter I put out that accompanies every episode. So every week I send you an email with 5 things I thought were worth sharing from the action sports world. Articles, film clips, things that will contextualize the episodes, the occasional offer from friends of mine, bonus episodes that you can't get through the website. There's no spam. There's no advertising. It's a way of getting a little deeper into the themes I discuss with my guests each episode. You can sign up on my website, www.wearelookingsideways.com, but be warned, I didn't bother with any of that newsletter bollocks early in the year that everybody was harping on about. I just thought, well, who cares really? I'm not going to add to that tide of yibble, so I just ignored it. But I did add a secondary sign up to keep out the old spam bots. And this thing turned out to be extremely effective, so much so that at the last count, a whopping 3,000 people have signed up for my newsletter and then not bothered to confirm their subscription. That is because what happens is you click the link, you sign up, you get sent an email, you have to click that link and then you're in. And what's happening is people are signing up and then just not clicking the second link. Probably because it's going into their spam, to be honest. So if you are going to sign up, be aware that you'll get sent an email with a link you need to click to confirm that you are actually real. And if you signed up and wonder why you're not getting any of these wondrous emails I harp on about every now and again, well, there's your answer. 3,000 of you. I mean, that's a pretty sizable number. So check that spam filter, click the link, and await a nice weekly oversight into the world of action sports from yours truly. So that's it for this week. I'll be back with my next episode, which is with none other than legendary snowboarder Todd Richards. Now, I caught up with Todd in Hossegor the other week, and I'm happy to report that he is also outrageously good company. We had a fantastically entertaining and gossipy chat about the state of snowboarding, that Olympic boycott from Terrier, the reality of the mid-90s pipe rivalry, how you cope with being an action sports senior citizen, and much more. Don't miss that one. It really is funny. Charming character. I had a right laugh with Todd. And again, the hype is real. So subscribe via my website so you make sure you don't miss that one. Right, until the next time, have a good one and I'll see you later. Nice one.